Hello everyone, Helen here. How are you doing? I do hope you're okay. Welcome along, and big welcome if you're new here. I'm coming to you from my craft room today, and I live in Durham in the northeast of England. I'm a piano teacher, and the rest of my time I just do all sorts of creative things, unless I'm away in the camper van, of course. And today I'm just going to have a nice little crafty catch up with you. I'm going to mention the Mouse Make Along again. I'm going to mention Christmas in July, and I'm just going to share with you some projects I've been working on, and I'll finish with a nice bit of piano music and some Orkney flowers. So that's today. So first of all, the Mouse Along. Well, the thing that I feared most happened, and that was that in the Grand Parade there were 2 people's mice missing. So that made me very sad that I'd missed them out. However, I have rectified the situation, and I remade the Grand Parade video slideshow that I turned into the video to include the missing mice. And in case you haven't noticed, I've uploaded that as a sort of standalone video on YouTube with the comments switched off, and just in case you want to watch it, and so you might go back and see if you can spot the 2 mice that were missing before. But I'm really sorry that that happened. And one thing I've learned is that if I ever do another make along, and I might be persuaded to do another one, then I will not use Instagram as a means of gathering photos. I'll just ask everybody to email me their photo or photos, because that's by far the best way that I won't miss out on anybody's photos. So anyway, I've got a long list of things here though that I want to mention, and the first thing that I mustn't forget, this is my most important thing actually, is that when I was giving you a sneak preview of the prizes, I completely forgot to mention the very kind prize that the lovely Dawn of Dawn's Days YouTube channel gave to the pot of prizes that they were to give out. And so so 2 lucky prize winners have received pattern prizes from Dawn. So thank you so much, Dawn, for for joining in. You didn't have time to do any mouse making, but you still joined in, so that was really lovely. And I know some of you who watch me watch Dawn as well, but if you haven't seen Dawn, you might like to head over to her vlog. She does a weekly vlog just about her daily life living in the Netherlands. She's originally from Manchester, but she lives in the Netherlands, and it's always lovely to spend a bit of time each week listening to Dawn telling you all about all sorts of things that she gets up to. She also has a crafty channel called The Woven Almanac as well, so you could go and check that out if you haven't seen that as well. So yeah, so that's that thing that I mustn't forget. And as I said in the Roundup podcast to the Mouse Make Along, there were so many mice that people had told me about, that told me about the patterns they'd used and the names they'd given the mice, that I just couldn't possibly mention them all. And but I did say that I wanted to come back to it, and so I'm going to mention a few today. It was lovely that some of the mice even had backstories, and there was Mary's mouse, Duncan, lives in the bramble patch alongside an eastern box turtle, and Duncan the mouse collects pre-1980 pennies, and he's doing that to guard against the price of copper rising. Irene in Argentina, she told me about her mouse. I learnt something new. So in the UK, and I don't know about other countries, but we often tell children that when their first baby teeth drop out, then the tooth fairy will come and take them away and leave some money. But in Spanish-speaking countries, apparently, there is not a tooth fairy, but there's a tooth mouse. And so Irene, for each of her grandchildren, when they're at that age, that their baby teeth are falling out, she always makes them a tooth mouse. So the one that she entered into the mouse salon was for her grandson Bruno, who's going to be 6 very soon. So it was lovely to hear that story. I liked seeing Roderick, the literary mouse, who's there with some of his books, and I loved that some of the photos had real animals in them. There was Angela's mouse called Casper, who was deep in conversation with their cat, who with a wonderful name is called Edgar Allan Poe. And Rachel's mouse was visited by a lovely black cat who seemed maybe a bit too interested in the mouse. And Carolyn's little Santa mouse had a large friendly dog for company, so that was lovely. And I loved Marietta's mouse as well, who is called Ayanda, I think that's how you say it anyway, a princess, born and bred in sunny South Africa. Quite a few of you used sort of yarn scraps to make your little mice, and scraps of fabric for making mice and things. And Jennifer made this lovely project bag just using various oddments of fabric. It was just her own design, I think, and that's really lovely. And Lenore used some recycled flannelette fabric from bags that some new flannelette sheets came in, so that was good for making her mice. And Lily used some scraps of 1980s fabric to create a piece of patchwork fabric, and then she used that to make the dress for her mouse, or one of her mice. So I might well return to the mouse salon again, but I think that's enough for today. And I'm going to introduce you in a moment to a new member of the family in the craft room. Yes, another toy. And you'll not be surprised to know, another Cynthia Valet pattern. When I was in Orkney, I did buy some yarn in a couple of different places. If you've been watching the campervan trip, I haven't come to those places yet where I bought the yarn, but I did come away with a couple of skeins of yarn. And so I wanted to make something special with it, and something that would remind me of my time in Orkney. And one of the absolute highlights of the time, which you'll have seen if you've watched part 2, although you won't have seen them, was that we saw some mountain hares when we walked to the Old Mine of Hoy. And so I really fancied using the yarn to make a hare. Well, I couldn't find any hare patterns that I really liked. And then I realised that ages ago I'd bought Cynthia Valet's pattern for Bunny O'Deal, which I think was her very first pattern that she published actually, and I'd never made it. I'd made the dress that's a part of the pattern, but I hadn't actually made the rabbit. And that rabbit has really quite long ears, and I decided that that could become a hare. That would be fine, or at least a rabbity hare. a bit like the Luna Lapin is called a rabbity hare. It's got quite long ears, and yeah, anyway, so I decided to do that. So I had some natural coloured North Ronaldsay yarn, and I'm sure some of you know that the North Ronaldsay sheep are famous for just eating seaweed, and so I suppose their fleece is special in a way that, you know, it's been created from not from normal eating grass sheep, but anyway, that's their claim to fame. So I had some cream yarn, and then I bought a hand dyed skein of North All wool, which was just in different colour blues, which I thought would be lovely, reminding you of the sea all around the islands of Orkney. So I thought, right, I'll make a cream coloured rabbit, and I had 88 grams, and it said on the label that it was DK, so that is, I think in other terms it's called light worsted. Worsted weight is Aran, so it's thick, that's thicker, and sport weight I think is 4-ply thinner, but so DK comes in between. But I very quickly realised that it was knitting up as much, much thicker than that, more like Aran or even Chunky. So I got down as far as I did the arms and the top of the chest, and then I realised there was no way I was going to have enough yarn to finish the rabbity hair off all in the same colour. So, but when I was in Perth at the yarn show there, I had bought a different kind of North Ronaldsay yarn. So I thought, right, well, it can still be an Orcadian rabbit. So I started using that, and actually it fitted in very well. The thickness was right, and I knitted it so that it looked like he was wearing some underwear. And also I knew that I was going to make him an outfit that would actually cover up the different colours, so I didn't really mind too much. But actually I think it looks okay. I was using 3.5mm needles. So it ended up that the knitted fabric was a bit stiff, and so it really, really needed to be bathed when I'd finished knitting him. And and he had a good long bath, so that the fibres really soaked up, and also got rid of the kind of the slightly greasy feel that it had. It took ages and ages to dry, and then I stuffed him with pure wool stuffing. And it turned out to be quite a large rabbity hare, which I'll show you in a moment, the sort of the size of him. But yeah, anyway, so then I got on with making some clothes for him, and I decided to do the garment that Cynthia calls pyjamas, although I just call it kind of an all-in-one. I don't know, it doesn't really look like pyjamas to me, but yeah, so I got on and made that. So I was using this DK dyed yarn, and I very soon discovered that that was going to be far too small. And so you can see in the photo here, it did fit over the back okay, and it was garter stitch, quite stretchy, but there was no way on the front that the two pieces were going to meet, let alone lap over, which they needed to, so that you could put buttons and buttonholes. So I took it all out, and I found some John Arbon yarn that was like a sympathetic blue colour for the colours in the Orkney yarn. So I held that double, I went up a needle size, and this time it was a perfect fit. So that was good. And the John Arbon yarn didn't spoil the overall effect of the different colours of blue, the different shades of blue in the outfit. So, and by some miracle I had 7 buttons that were kind of a set. They're not all identical, but they're all, you know, the same, from the same set anyway. So I was sure I was never going to find 7 buttons all the same, and I did. So that was really good. And so yeah, so here he is, and he is. I knew as soon as I saw him that he was a very gentle character. I knew that he needed to have an Orcadian name, so he's called Roggenwald the Gentle. And I took so many photos of him out in the garden that I decided to make them into a little slideshow video with a bit of piano music. So yeah, let's go and look at Roggenwald out in the garden. So, and Roggenwald, by the way, is 16 inches tall, or 40 centimetres. So really very huggable in size. And I love him. And he's just gonna, or he's always gonna live with me. He's not going anywhere else. And will remind me of very happy times in Orkney. So there we go. You go and lie down there for a moment. So the other finished object that I made actually while I was on Orkney, I didn't finish them when I was away. Honestly, I did not nearly as much crafting as I normally would. I think it was because of all the really light evenings, and we went off and did things in the evenings as well, and didn't sort of sit around at the van and give me a chance to do some knitting or whatever. Anyway, so I finished this pair of socks made from absolutely beautiful Arctic spin dye, zebra yarn in pastel colours. One of you in the comments said that it reminded you of Licorice All Sorts. I think that's right, it is Licorice All Sorts. So really beautiful, and they'll be going in my box of gifts to give at Christmas. I'm mentioning Christmas, coming to Christmas now. Yes, Christmas in July. Well, I had grand plans at the start of this year. I had set aside a basket and I put in there projects that I wanted to do as part of Christmas in July. And I had this idea that I might do more than weekly little vlog to track my progress of making all of these things. And well, of course, I did a mouse along. I went to Orkney for 2 weeks, and yeah, suddenly it was the middle of July, and I hadn't started any of my Christmas projects. So next week's podcast, I think it'll either be the next part of the camper van trip, or it'll be me showing you what I have done so far on my Christmas and July things, or maybe I'll pop in an extra one. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see how I fit in the time. But I am taking part in a little make-along for Christmas in July that I couldn't resist, which was Kaylee of Shadows at Midnight, the Shadows at Midnight YouTube channel, and she is having a Christmas in July piggies make-along, pigs in blankets. I'll put the hashtag name on here, and if you want to join in, then I will leave a link in the description box to Kaylee's channel, and you can go and listen to her telling you all about all of her little pigs that she's made so far. And in case you're watching this and you haven't heard of the concept of pigs in blankets, it's just something that's part of a traditional Christmas dinner. They're little cocktail sausages wrapped in a piece of bacon, and their nickname is pigs in blankets. But there are quite a lot of knitting and crochet patterns out there for pigs in blankets. So I thought, right, I'll have to do this. And first of all, I just made up a little pattern myself. I made a tiny little piggy in a blanket. I tried to make his blanket look like a rasher of bacon, which is not really quite the right colours, but I didn't have the right colours. So there's my little piggy in a blanket, which I think I might take his eyes out because I don't quite like them. I'm going to do the eyes again, but or maybe I'll just leave it as it is. But that was my first little piggy, and it's a really simple shape. I just wanted it to actually be the shape of a sausage underneath, and then wanted him to be wrapped in a little rasher of bacon. So that's him. But then I realised when I'd made him that a little while ago I'd started making one of the pigs from the Mushin Friends by Cynthia Valley. I made 2 pigs from there, Rose and Matthew, but I'd started making another one, and I'd just done the head, and that's because somebody had asked me for a bit of help with the pattern, or was asking me a question about it, and the only way I could think to answer it was to actually knit it to the point that the little problem had occurred. And I might tell you about that another time. I'm not going to go off on a tangent with that. But anyway, so I had this pig's head, and I'd put the eyes in, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make the whole pig, but I decided, right, I could finish this pig off and make him a blanket and then he can enter the make along as well. And so, yes, I finished him, and it turned out to be a bit of an experiment in using acrylic yarn for these animals, because all of the other animals that I've made from Moosh and Friends and Cynthia's other patterns, I've used, 100% wool of some sort, and I hadn't used acrylic yarn, and I have quite a lot of acrylic yarn in my stash here, so because I like making blankets from it. It's very practical, and anyway, let's not go off on a tangent on that either, but it was interesting to use the acrylic yarn. One of the things I found was that the where you do increases or decreases it stands out much more than when you're using, I suppose, a slightly fluffier 100% wool, which kind of sticks together a bit more, and even more so when you've given it a warm bath. So this, all of the shapings are really, really obvious in the acrylic yarn. And the other thing that I found was actually, I think they're harder to stuff than the animals made of 100% wool. It's easier to stretch the fabric of the acrylic yarn. Well, I found so anyway. You can see in this photo that I think one of the feet is a little bit overstuffed, and I've just stretched it a bit too much. So it's actually slightly bigger than the other foot, but anyway. But apart from that, no problem at all. And then I crocheted him a blanket so that he was a pig in a blanket. And here he is. Uncle Sven, he's called, because he's very tall. And I'll show you a photo in a moment of how tall he is compared to the other two pigs that I made. And so I thought that he must come from Scandinavia because he was so tall. And in fact, he told me that he was called Uncle Sven and that he's from Norway. He is very proud of his Viking origins. He loves the outdoors. He's very keen on wild swimming and naturism. And he's very happy just to have a blanket to wrap him around. He doesn't want any other clothes. But I thought, so that the blanket doesn't just drop off, I would add a little loop to the blanket and give him a fine brass button there to stop the blanket from falling off. So you can protect your modesty a little bit. Not that you care really, do you? No. Matthew and Rosa are extremely excited to meet Uncle Sven. They call him Giant Uncle Sven because he's so tall. And they are really interested to hear all his tales of adventure. Uncle Sven actually has been getting on very well with Roggenvald the Gentle, and they both love reading the Orkneyinga saga stories, and they've been comparing notes on which are their favourite stories in there. So altogether, lovely additions to my family here. So there we go. Right then, I think I'm going to round things off now with a little trip to Orkney, but there are lots of little snippets that I took of different flowers, although you'll see one thing isn't a flower, but I had a good reason for including a non-flower as well. And yes, and it's just accompanied by a bit of music called Orkney Farewell that I wrote. So yeah, sit back and enjoy a few beautiful scenes from Orkney. Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye to you for this week, and I'll be back again very soon. But until then, as always, take great care of yourself. Keep yourself nice and busy, and I will see you again very soon. Okay then, bye.